Hey guys, it is Orion Webster. Hope this video finds you doing well. So this is, I don't know if I'll call this an episode of the podcast necessarily, I guess it is, but this is more of a housekeeping episode, or just some other stuff. It's kind of outside of the usual format that I've been working with here. So actually what I did here, I was telling you guys before a little bit about how I've basically been organizing my thoughts on the page and just writing out different paragraphs and bullet points and different things that help me work out my thoughts and kind of refine it a little bit and, you know, just refine what I want to say. But a little bit different from how I was doing it before. So basically, I have created some notes, or I had created earlier today, some notes that I had not necessarily intended to do in a podcast. They're mostly for myself and how I want to think about some of this stuff. But what I decided here is that I would share this with you guys. This will probably not end up being a 20-minute video because fortunately I only have a short page of notes here, so hopefully I'll be able to share this with you in a few minutes. So I think this will not be an official episode of the podcast, but just an extra video where I just talk about some of these housekeeping type things. So anyway, just kind of rattle off the title here so you get a sense of what I want to or how I'm thinking here. So the way that I'm approaching this podcast is, you know, I am not an expert in any particular field. I don't have a degree in podcasting or in any particular science. Haven't gone to college. Let's put it that way. Not that I really think that matters in 2017, but you know, just to let you guys know, we're turned off by that reality. But I am an educated person. I do self-educate frequently, pretty much daily, for really a significant portion of the day. I don't know if you'd call it discipline, but I'm naturally curious, and I've also cultivated more curiosity through doing it, and I've cultivated the habit of trying to learn something every day, and so I end up just learning for hours and hours and hours, listening to different podcasts, consuming books, doing different things with my hands, doing stuff like this that allows me to grow as an individual. And so, I mean, the way I look at it is that the more I self-educate, the more I read, the more, basically, you know, the more I learn, the more I earn, in the sense that sort of changing the appropriation of that quote, the more value that I can give to you guys. So what I mean is that, you know, like the more I learn, the more I read, the more I grow, the more I can actually share with you in the podcast. Hopefully, the more value you guys get from it, the more I can share it, the more this podcast grows, the more it can become an actual revenue stream for me, and the more I can share this and get this out to other people, the smarter I'll get. And again, the more value I'll be able to give, and I'll be able to give value that hopefully can really transform lives in a really beautiful way, and we can have some really awesome conversations that helps to usher an age of wisdom. And actually, this will end up being a 20-minute video if I talk about what an age of wisdom is. I guess I can a little bit here because I don't know if that's a Google term yet, so I'll just define it briefly. But basically, usually, you know, people hear the age we're living in right now commonly defined as an age of information. So an age of wisdom is really a step where, instead of simply being surrounded by tons and tons of information that is generally unuseful and not knowing how to utilize it, an age of wisdom is where we're selective about our information consumption, but where the information that we're gathering is highly useful, highly specific, and helps us to be more effective people. That's basically the premise of it. So it's basically ushering an era where people actually figure out how to have control over the information and not have information have control over them. That's what it is at a basic level. And I think, despite what many people believe, that through conversations and through a really through the betterment of technology, we can, in fact, I would say, make people across the board smarter and have a better quality of life. I don't think that there are people doomed to being quote-unquote stupid, or to put it in a more accurate way, on the lower end of the bell curve, and then have a group of people in the middle that are benefiting from it, and then have another group of people that are already on the cutting edge anyway. I don't believe that all these numbers and ratios stay the same regardless of what types of people we have and what kinds of conversations we're having and what kinds of technologies we're building. I think that those things massively influence the overall state, right? So it's not any section of the bell curve specific, it affects all of us. And although it may not fundamentally change the difference between, although I think it will to some degree, but it might not change the fact that there is some disparity between people in the middle of the bell curve, or people towards the end of the bell curve, and people way on the low end of the bell curve on the left. And no, I don't mean the political left. I mean, if the left is the smaller numbers and the right is the bigger numbers, the lower end would be lower IQ people, less intelligent people, less wise people, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, that is an age of wisdom, and I think you can already imagine why I believe it's important to do that, because I think we all benefit. I don't think there's any downside, so why not? And as for a selfish reason, because I'm a high IQ person, frankly, I enjoy having intelligent conversations, and the more we spread wisdom and good technology, the more people there are to do cool projects with and have amazing conversations with. So that is my reason at scale, you could say. But I talked a little bit about, how I like to use writing together with podcasting, and how I like to write out my ideas and do different bullet points and paragraphs and things like that to set up for a podcast. So I will continue to do that, and I'll probably be doing it more extensively. I might get to the point where I have many pages of notes, and I think that that's very likely, because there are some topics that I haven't yet done, just because I'm trying to start with some easier stuff that I can address with what I already know. But the way I'll be approaching this is I'll be approaching it as a student. So in a lot of cases, instead of coming from an expert position, or rather than coming from someone who's dealt with this stuff and really knows what they're talking about already, although of course there's always more to learn, I'm not saying I'm open-minded, but generally I will be doing a massive amounts of research and then sharing my findings, and then interjecting my own spin on it, and kind of connecting thoughts and things I've already learned to new ideas, and helping to create other ones that you might not otherwise get if you just read these things yourself or whatever. And frankly, it also takes, and again, I'm a high IQ person, I read very fast, I might read, 7 books in a week, while doing tons of other stuff, and then distill what I learned from those books with, and share that with you guys. And I know that for many of you, due to your schedule, or due to your ability to read quickly and retain knowledge, for any number of reasons, might not be able to, and simply not want to do that. So again, you can consider delegating to me to find out and kind of research the stuff for you. And certainly I have no problem being viewed that way, because that's kind of part of how I see my job. So anyway, another thing I've been thinking about is actually starting a blog alongside this. And I guess part of it is I got the idea because I see a lot of people who have a blog, who do writing, and who do a podcast, and that's something I really enjoy. And it just so happens that I love doing audio and articulating, with my voice, I guess. But also I love articulating on the page, so I kind of end up being an author in both senses, which is really cool. And I would love to just kind of start a Tumblr account. I did briefly, but I didn't really do anything on it, so I'll probably start another one and really just bog down on that and stick to it and try to make useful content for you guys. But what will be cool about that is that for those of you who are fast readers or for those of you who prefer reading, or whatever your circumstances, you'll be able to read some of the posts. And for those of you who prefer audio, or who like audio, or who like to be able to do this as a secondary task, you can enjoy this, or you can still continue to enjoy the audio. I don't know if I will do transcripts for the podcast that I do in the future. I mean, I just have to admit that if I, let's be real here. If I use thousands and thousands of words, even in just like a 20-minute period, if I were to have a podcast over a series of parts, if I just batch, and I have, because realistically, if I do a conversation with someone, and this is probably what's going to happen, we're going to have a set chunk of time for an hour and a half, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, or whatever it is. I'm going to record. I'm going to break that conversation up into a number of parts. So then I'm going to have to go through all of that and actually write it down word for word, because I do not have a group of employees helping me at this moment. I am a solo activist, which is kind of how I like it. That may change. I admit that very well could change, but for the most part, this is going to be something that I have set up and intend to keep as something that I'm entirely in control of. So there will not be any perverse incentives. There will not be any struggle for figuring out whose creative ideas should get prioritized. It's always going to be me. No, jokingly, but the point is that I will be able to be in charge of what I'm saying and doing in this medium, which is really important to me. So anyway, I already kind of talked about building an income from this podcasting, not only for myself and supporting myself. This is something that I really enjoy doing, and I want it to be a career in a sense, or a part of a career, but also so I can expand the podcast and do different things with the podcast, things like that, and reach out to other people and have a more interesting and influential podcast. But anyway, that's really basically all of the housekeeping that I wanted to do for today. There might be more. This video ended up being a little bit longer than I thought it would be, so I don't know what I'm going to classify it as. Maybe I'll make this an Inbetween Eisode. I don't like stealing that name from Tim, but even if he had never said that, I would probably have called it that, so too bad. Sorry, Tim, if you ever listen to this, 20 years from now when it's popular. But anyway, jokes aside, thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble yet again. So I hope that this, clarified some of my goals and how I'm thinking about different things and some of my plans for the future for those of you who are interested in that. And I hope you guys have a great day. This is Orion Webster signing out. Later, guys.